If you want to understand why I left that place I was at, you're probably just going to have to hear the entire story. You won't believe it, of course, but your skepticism means nothing, because what I saw that night on the bayou has been with me ever since. In my mind, in my thoughts, and sometimes even in my dreams. It exists in a disturbing memory that I cannot shake away, that it will never go away, just so long as I live. It will be one of those things so terrifying that it will be just as keen in my mind as on my deathbed as it the day it occurred. But whatever you believe in me or not, I will tell you anyway. If not, only to serve as a warning, a plea for caution if you ever find yourself near the swamps late at night. At the time, I was working at a shitty little fast food place. The only thing worse than working at a shitty fast food place is working at a shitty fast food place on the night shift, by yourself, without a vehicle, especially when you so happen to live in the heart of rural Louisiana. Such as my case some years ago, the night this event happened to me. During this time, I lived quite a few miles away from the restaurant I worked at, and due to my lack of a vehicle or any access to bus public system, I was dependent on others for my transportation to and from work. One night after a busy evening of serving customers, I closed the store and locked up the restaurant. When I phoned for my ride, nobody answered. Now I'm not here to throw a pity party, but I can't help but to express anger at the fact that the person who drove me to and fro to work was my roommate, who had a car but no fucking job. And I was basically the only person in our house who paid the rent at this time. And this loser had carelessness to fall asleep, leaving me with no fucking option but to walk again. This was not the first time that this had happened. The first time it took me an hour and a half to get home, walking briskly. And for those of you who have never been to rural regions of Louisiana, you have no clue. Here what we have is called a bayou. It's basically swamp. Thick, murky, moist, frog-laden, mosquito-swarming, gator-infested, crappy-smelling swamp. With the thick, tall grass, cattails, capris, trees, and heavens of pond scum. And I just so happened to live on the bayou. All the way down a long dirt road with hardly any street lights and thick swamp on both sides of the road. There were no side roads, and the houses down this street are separated sometimes by more than a quarter mile. It's not merely spooky walking down this road at night, but it's fucking terrifying. You hear sounds, both real and imagined, coming from the bayou. Chirping, croaking, howling, grunting animals, the rustling of leaves and the branches in the canopony of the cypress trees, and the splashing water from underneath them. That's the worst. You can hear the sound of something lurking nearby, abruptly dunk underwater. It can be a turtle, a snake, or an alligator. You never know. You just keep walking, with your teeth and hands clenched tight, hoping nothing crawls through the tall grass next to you and onto the road. Or even worse than the subtle drink dunking sounds, the sun splashes that happen when you're walking and scare a toad or a frog and it jumps into the water. The sound makes you almost shit yourself as you begin to running spree that lasts about 3 seconds before you realize what it was, and then you're left with your heart pounding so hard that the sound of your blood gushing in your temples scare you just as much. These are the types of things that happen when you're in the bayou. This is what I had to look forward for that night as my asshole roommate slept sprawled out on the sofa with the television set, probably turned on reruns of the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers. And don't get the impression that I simply called once and gave up. You can trust that his cell had around 7 or so missed calls, 3 very unfriendly voicemails, and several aggressive text messages. I could just imagine his phone laying in another room of the house, softly vibrating in my desperate attempts to reach him as he snored. But eventually I gave up, and having just about no other friends to contact in the area as recourse, I stopped by the nearby gas station, grabbed an energy drink, and began my way back home. Now, you must understand, the first 30 or so minutes of my walk isn't that bad. I'm still in the most populated part of town, and there are streetlights, stores, houses, and cars passing in large numbers. That's important. If there were a lot of cars going, you feel safer when there were very few cars going by. Because when there was only one or two cars that pass you every 3 minutes, that means that there could be a psychopath in one of those cars, and they may have enough time to stop by and murder you without being caught. But if there are a lot of cars around, there may be psychopaths passing by, but they'll most likely not kill you because then there are too many people around to witness the crime. At least that's my reasoning. I digress. No psychopaths pulled up next to me as I walked out of this part of town. Next, there comes a time in my journey where I have to turn down several suburban neighborhoods and walk some streets to get where I'm going. And here's where things get a little less safe. I have to be a little more cautious. There is less traffic down these roads that you may never know when some punk or gay may be hanging out in some empty lot or house, who might mess with you or trying to pick a fight or mug you just to take an empty bottle of malt liquor and bash your skull in, as an initiation of ritual or something. These are thoughts that go through my head as I walk this region, and they keep me on my toes until I reach a point where houses become fewer and fewer and the bayou begins. This is where the dirt road leading me to my home is, and that's where I found myself this night, on foot. I looked down on the narrow road. You can only see one before it fades into misty darkness. I resented that I would have to spend the next hour walking its distance until I reach home. But anger took hold of my fear when I thought about how could all of this be spared if not for the neglect and carelessness of my roommate. When I got home, I was really going to have it with him. I truly considered at that time possibility of physically smacking his damn face. And with this thought in mind, I launched defiantly down the road. The further I walked, the darker it became, until no light shined but the stars and the silver moon above me. Very soon, the sound of any vehicle was completely non-existent. There was just me, the road, and the bayou, and whatever creatures dwelt there. I heard the crickets chirp and the frogs croak and the occasional bird coo. To avoid fear, I focused on their chorus and let their sounds preoccupy my mind. I walked watching my toes press into the sandy dirt as I placed one foot in front of the other. I would count my steps until I reached 100, and then I began again. I tried to lose myself in that repetition. My shoes became damper and damper until I felt the soles of my feet become moist. I stopped counting, ponder whatever I should smack my roommate with a wet sock, but my thoughts were interrupted when I glanced up for a moment and saw that I wasn't alone on this road. A sharp panic seized my heart, and I became very nervous. A long distance up ahead of me, I could discern the soft silhouette of a figure. It was so far away that I couldn't tell whether it was moving ahead or in my direction. I froze and I could feel the blood gushing in my temples. Were the chances of there being some malicious punk wandering around the street at night looking to rob me or pick a fight? This was a reassuring thought, as I had tried to convince myself that I was safe. I tried to keep calm and not let my nerves get the best of me. I mean, whoever this was probably was just as frightened as the prospects of me, as I was one of them. If they had already detected me, that is. I didn't know what to do. Run? There was only two directions. Continue walking? What were the risks? As I stood there where I saw the figure was indeed moving in my direction, and its form was becoming more defined, and this was the time I began to notice how awkwardly it was moving. The figure didn't walk normal. It didn't bob up and down like a normal person looks as they walk. What was coming towards me? It would seem from my perspective, move in short, quick, jerking movements. And I could see from the light was present, and how twitchy limbs projected from its torso, and how it was getting closer, and how its head stuck out from a neck that was no longer in any human neck or should be, and how at this time I could now faintly hear the noises that seemed to make the sounds of suckling, and how it was moving quicker, and its face lifted, and I could see its eyes glare like glowing yellow beads, and how these wide beady eyes locked into mine staring at me, and how it stopped, and how we were both there, motionless, yards away, looking at each other. And then it let out the most ungodly and human screech I've ever heard, like a pig being gutted. It squealed violently, and the sound resounded through the bayou, and the chirping and croaking of crickets and frogs stopped. Everything stopped, and the rumbling and humming as well that could be heard afterwards. The rumbling and humming of a motor ahead, a vehicle speeding towards us, tires racing loudly. The thing in front of me hunched over and turned to see the headlights beaming our way. It hissed, getting down on all fours, pausing for a moment to turn back towards me, gawking at me with its wide eyes, before clawing hastily into the swamp. The vehicle that scared that thing away was my roommate's car. He never saw it, whatever it was, and I never wanted to see it again. I moved as soon as I could, and haven't been there since.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.